I want you to just picture a scenario for a second. It's a Tuesday evening, early 2026. You're at home. Maybe you've just finished dinner and you're settling in to watch a movie,
Okay.
and then you hear a knock on the door. Now, you aren't expecting a package. You aren't expecting a friend to drop by.
Right. It's that time of night where a knock on the door is usually bad news.
Exactly. So you open it up, and standing there isn't a neighbor asking for sugar. It's not a delivery driver. It's a private investigator.
Wow.
And they aren't looking for a missing person. They aren't looking for a fugitive. They're looking for information about you.
It honestly sounds like the opening scene of a noir thriller or maybe a dystopian sci-fi novel, but this is actually happening.
It is. Specifically, they want to know who you've been talking to.
Yeah.
They want to know what you've been saying and what you know about the internal workings of the most valuable private company in the history of Silicon Valley, OpenAI.
It really sends a chill down your spine, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, we are talking about the company that brought us ChatGPT, the company that for years positioned itself as the savior of humanity.
Right.
Their mission statement was literally to ensure that artificial general intelligence benefits all of humanity.
And now, fast forward to early 2026, and the reports surfacing are that they're aggressively hunting down critics, like they're investigating former employees who spoke out, they're looking into congressional staffers who might be drafting regulations.
It's aggressive.
Yeah.
It's messy. And honestly, it sets a very specific tone for what we need to unpack in our deep dive today. Because you really have to ask yourself a fundamental question.
Yeah.
Does a confident company, a company that is winning, a company that's secure in its future, send private investigators to knock on the doors of former staffers?
No.
Yeah.
That is what you do when you're paranoid. That's what you do when you are scared.
Exactly. It smells like fear. It smells like a cover-up. And today, we're going to look at exactly why OpenAI, the absolute giant of the industry, is suddenly acting like a cornered animal.
Because if you look at the stack of sources we have today, and we have a lot, we've got internal memos, financial leaks, deep technical analysis, it suggests OpenAI isn't just hitting a rough patch.
No. It looks like they might be staring down the barrel of a total collapse.
That is a massive claim. Total collapse. I think people hear that and go, no way. It's ChatGPT. Everyone uses it.
Right. But the evidence suggests otherwise. We're looking at a convergence of crises. It's not just one thing going wrong, it's 4 different catastrophes hitting them simultaneously.
And before we get into those 4 pillars of failure, there was a specific moment recently where the vibes really shifted. A moment where even the diehard fans had to pause and say, wait a minute, something is wrong here.
January 16, 2026, the bombshell announcement.
Let's set the scene for that. It's mid-January. The tech world is just holding its breath. Rumors had been flying for months about a new model, maybe GPT-5, maybe something even bigger.
Everyone's ready for the next revolution.
Right. The expectation was magic. The expectation was, here comes the superintelligence.
Instead, OpenAI puts out a press release. And they announce 2 things. First, they are testing advertisements in the free version of ChatGPT.
Huge.
And second, they're rolling out a new budget tier for $8 a month.
To the casual observer, I think that sounds like standard business stuff. YouTube has ads. Spotify has a budget tier. Why is this a catastrophe? Why is this the beginning of the end?
Context is everything here. You have to rewind to October 2024. Sam Altman, the CEO, is on record discussing their business model. He was asked specifically about ads.
And he didn't just say, we prefer not to. He called advertising a last resort.
A last resort. He explicitly said that if they had to turn to ads, it would mean their core business model had failed.
Wow.
He viewed it as a sign of defeat.
Yeah.
He said he would only pull that lever if there was absolutely no other way to keep the lights on.
So by their own definition, by the CEO's own words, the business model has failed. They pulled the lever they promised they wouldn't pull unless they were desperate.
Precisely. And that is the lens through which we have to view everything else we're going to discuss today. This isn't a strategic pivot.
Yeah.
It's a panic move.
Yeah.
We're looking at a company that's bleeding cash, losing users, and most critically, facing a technological wall that nobody expected them to hit this soon.
We've got a massive mission ahead of us for this deep dive. We're going to break this down into 4 specific pillars. 4 crises hitting OpenAI all at once.
That's right. First, we have the scaling problem. This is the tech side. The terrifying reality that the technology itself has stopped getting smarter.
Second, the market share collapse. Customers and partners are leaving in droves for Google and Apple. The moat is just gone.
Third, the financial black hole.
Right.
The burn rate is astronomical, and the bank account is running dry. We're talking about numbers that would bankrupt small countries.
And finally, the trust issue. This centers squarely on the leadership and history of Sam Altman. Can you trust the captain if the ship is sinking and he's telling you it's a submarine?
And the stakes. Well, we have analysts like former Fidelity manager George Noble openly talking about bankruptcy by 2027. We aren't talking about stock dip. We're talking about the potential extinction of the company that started the AI revolution.
So buckle up. Let's get into the first pillar, the scaling problem. This is the one that really surprised me because the narrative for the last 3 years has been AI is on an exponential curve.
It's Moore's Law on steroids. That's what we were sold.
Right. Today it's a toddler, tomorrow it's Einstein, next week it's God. We were told that the graph only goes up and to the right, straight into the stratosphere.
That was the sales pitch. That was the religion of Silicon Valley from 2022 to 2025. But to understand why OpenAI is in trouble in 2026, you have to understand what happened, or rather what didn't happen, with their flagship project, codenamed Orion.
Orion. That was supposed to be the GPT-4 killer, right?
Correct. This was the big one. In the summer of 2024, OpenAI finished the primary training run for Orion. The internal rhetoric was off the charts. Sam Altman was telling his team that they were about to go through the looking glass.
Just massive hype.
The expectation was that Orion would make GPT-4 look like a pocket calculator.
So the engineers are high-fiving. They think they've just birthed a new alien intelligence. And then they turned it on.
And then reality set in. It wasn't exponentially better. In fact, on many coding tasks and complex reasoning benchmarks, it was barely an improvement over GPT-4.
Wait, barely an improvement after billions of dollars and years of work?
Barely. The exponential leap simply stopped. It plateaued.
That is terrifying if your entire valuation, your entire trillion-dollar promise is based on that leap continuing forever. But why did it stop? I thought the rule was more data plus more computer chips equals smarter AI.
That is what's known as the scaling law. And this is really the crux of the scientific crisis. To understand why it broke, we need a quick history lesson.
Okay, take us back. Where did this law come from?
It starts in 2017. Google invents the transformer architecture. That's the T in GPT. Before the transformer, AI was pretty dumb. It could do grammar, but couldn't hold a train of thought. It would forget the beginning of a sentence by the time it reached the end.
Right, I remember those old chatbots. You'd say hello, and 5 seconds later it would ask who you were. They were like talking to a goldfish.
Exactly. The transformer changed that. It allowed the model to pay attention to the entire context at once. But then, a researcher at OpenAI named Jared Kaplan published a paper on scaling laws.
Mm-hmm.
And this paper changed everything.
What was his theory?
Conventional wisdom in machine learning used to be that if you made a model too big, it would get dumb. It would just memorize data rather than learning patterns. It's called overfitting.
Okay.
Kaplan proved the opposite for these transformers. He showed that if you make the model bigger and you feed it more data, the performance goes up.
But not just goes up, right? It goes up in a specific way.
Right. It goes up in a predictable straight line, a power law. Kaplan basically drew a graph that said, if you add a 0 to your budget, you get a 0 added to the intelligence.
And for a while, he was right.
GPT-2, GPT-3, GPT-4, they followed Kaplan's line perfectly. It was uncanny. And that's what sparked the frenzy. Silicon Valley looked at that graph and said, oh my God, we don't need a new invention. We don't need a breakthrough. We just need to buy more GPUs.
It was like a guaranteed roadmap to the future. Just pour money in one end and super intelligence comes out the other.
But now in 2026, we're finding out the map was wrong. The map led them to a cliff. The consensus among researchers, now about 75% of them, according to recent surveys, is that current techniques won't reach AGI. The scaling law broke around the time they finished Orion.
So why did it break? Did they run out of chips?
No, they ran out of the internet.
Excuse me.
They ran out of high-quality human data. Think about it. To train GPT-4, they basically scraped the entire public web.
Yeah.
Wikipedia, Reddit, the New York Times, every blog, every comment section.
Yeah.
That made the model smart. But to make the next model smarter, the scaling law says you need exponentially more data, and there isn't any left.
So they've read every book? They've read every website?
They read every book, and now they're trying to train the AI on synthetic data created by other AIs. And it turns out that doesn't work very well. It's like making a photocopy of a photocopy.
And then photocopying that photocopy again.
Exactly. Eventually, the image gets blurry. The model starts to hallucinate more. It gets weird. It collapses on itself.
This brings us to a specific analogy from the sources that I absolutely loved, the Timmy analogy.
Oh, this is brilliant in its simplicity. It perfectly explains the fallacy of the last few years.
Let's hear it.
Imagine a father looking at his son, Timmy. Timmy was born 10 months ago. In that time, he went from lying on his back to crawling to walking, and now he's running around the living room.
Pretty standard baby stuff.
The father looks at that progress chart, crawling to running in 10 months, and he takes out a ruler and a piece of graph paper. He draws a line, and he says, look at this trajectory. If I extrapolate this line, in 2 years, Timmy will be flying. In 5 years, he'll be breaking the sound barrier.
I love that because it highlights the difference between linear progress and biological, or in this case, physical limits. Just because you got faster at running doesn't mean you're going to sprout wings.
Exactly. There are fundamental limitations to what the current architecture can do. Just because it got better at language doesn't mean it's actually thinking or understanding. And we're seeing those limitations play out in very embarrassing ways for these models.
We have to talk about the car wash example. This was in the source material, and it just made me laugh out loud. But it's actually quite disturbing when you think about what it implies for $1 trillion technology.
It is the perfect demonstration of the difference between sounding smart and being smart. So in this test, the user asks the AI a simple logic question. I need to wash my car. The car wash is 100 meters away. Should I walk or drive?
Simple question.
And the AI, being helpful and eco-conscious.
And probably trained on thousands of articles about the benefits of walking.
Right. It says you should walk. It's only 100 meters. It's a nice stroll. You'll save gas, get some fresh air. It's the healthy choice.
Sounds reasonable on the surface. Very polite.
Until you think about it for 1 second.
If I walk to the car wash, the car is still at my house.
Precisely. And when the user pointed this out, how will the car get washed if it's at my house? The AI had this moment of, oh, I see what you mean. Yes, if the car stays home, it won't get clean.
It's funny, but let's go deeper. What does that actually tell us about the brain of this machine? Because GPT-4 can pass the bar exam. It can write code. How can it be that stupid?
It tells us that the large language model does not have a world model. It doesn't understand physical objects, space, or causality. It's predicting the next likely word in a sentence based on billions of text documents.
It's a parlor trick.
It knows that walking is generally associated with short distances in health. It connects those concepts linguistically. But it doesn't see the car in the driveway. It doesn't simulate the world.
It's mimicking reasoning. It's an actor playing a scientist.
Correct. And that is the wall they have hit. You can throw $1 trillion of compute at that problem, but if the underlying architecture is just text prediction, it might never understand that you can't wash a car that isn't there.
So the engine of progress is stalled. They build a really fast car, but it can't fly, and they promised everyone it would act like a plane. That leads us directly into the second pillar of failure, the market share collapse. Because if your product stops getting better, people start looking elsewhere.
And they are looking elsewhere. The shift in the landscape between 2022 and 2026 is staggering. Do you remember the narrative when ChatGPT first launched?
Oh, absolutely. It was Google is dead. Google was caught with their pants down. Search is over. Everyone I knew was saying Google was a dinosaur.
Fast forward to early 2026, and that narrative has completely flipped. Google has recovered, and they are eating OpenAI's lunch.
Let's look at the data. In January 2026, ChatGPT's market share dropped to 65%. Now that sounds like a majority, but it was at 86% just a year prior. That is a massive bleed.
That's a free fall in tech terms. And usage time is down too, from 27 minutes a day to 21 minutes. People are using it less. But the real story isn't just the numbers, it's who they are losing to. It's Gemini.
Google's Gemini. Why is it winning now? I thought Gemini had a rocky start.
It did. It had a terrible start. It was ridiculed. But Google did what Google does best. They integrated it. See, OpenAI has a destination problem. To use ChatGPT, you have to open an app or go to a website. It's a distinct task.
Right. It requires intention.
Gemini is baked into your phone. It's in your email. It's in your Google Docs. It's in your maps. And crucially, it's winning on multimodal tasks.
Explain that for the listeners. Multimodal.
It means interacting with more than just text. It means pointing your camera at a broken part of your sink and asking, how do I fix this? Google has the data for that. They own YouTube. They have millions of hours of how-to videos. OpenAI doesn't.
Wow. Yeah.
So you ask Gemini a question about the real world, it can see it. OpenAI is still just reading about it.
So OpenAI is becoming a utility for coding and writing emails, which is fine, but it's not the operate your entire life assistant they promise.
And the corporate partners see this. This is the part that really hurts their bottom line. The partnership exodus is brutal.
We've got a list here in the notes. Apple, gone. They discarded OpenAI in favor of Gemini for their core iPhone integrations. Salesforce, ditch them. But the one that really signals the end of the affair is Microsoft.
That is the divorce of the century. Microsoft was their biggest backer. They poured nearly $13 billion into OpenAI. But recently, Microsoft's AI chief, Mustafa Suleyman, sent a very clear signal. He said publicly that Microsoft aims to be self-sufficient in AI.
Self-sufficient. That is corporate polite speak. For, we are building our own lifeboat because yours is sinking.
Exactly. Microsoft realizes that relying on a third party, especially one with a stalled product, is a strategic weakness. So they are distancing themselves. They are building their own models, MAI-1, in-house. And without Microsoft's infinite cloud credits and cash, OpenAI is in a very precarious position.
And it's not just the big giants attacking them from the top. They're getting nipped at from the bottom, too. The open source models.
The commoditization of AI. This was always the risk. We're seeing Chinese models like Kling AI and Quinn and Western open source models like Llama that are 90% as good as GPT-4, but free or incredibly cheap to run.
That's the nightmare scenario for any tech company. You spend billions developing a technology, and 3 years later, everyone has a free version of it on their laptop.
If intelligence becomes a commodity, like electricity or bandwidth, you can't charge a premium for it. And if you can't charge a premium, you can't pay back the billions you borrowed to build it.
Which brings us perfectly to the third pillar, and arguably the scariest one for the investors involved, the financial black hole.
The numbers here are honestly hard to wrap your head around. We're used to tech startups losing money. Uber lost money for years, Amazon lost money for years, but this is on a different scale entirely.
Let's look at the internal documents sourced from the information. The projection for 2026 is a $14 billion loss.
$14 billion in 1 year.
Yeah.
That is triple what they estimated just a year prior.
And the spending. They are committed to spending over $1 trillion on data center infrastructure over the next 8 years. $1 trillion.
To put that in perspective, their current revenue is about $13 billion. That is 1% of what they plan to spend. They are burning furniture to keep the house warm, but the house is the size of a city.
And they have these massive bills coming due. They have a deal to pay Oracle $60 billion a year starting in 2027 for computing power.
$60 billion a year. Even if they triple their revenue, they can't cover that. It's simple math. You cannot spend $1 trillion to make pennies.
And the investors are starting to do the math too. We are seeing an investor revolt.
The vibe in Silicon Valley has shifted from fear of missing out to the joy of missing out. You have Jensen Huang, the CEO of NVIDIA, the company, selling the shovels in this gold rush, publicly downplaying a committed investment.
That clip was painful. He was asked about a $100 billion investment round, and he basically said, "We never said that. We'll take it one step at a time." It was a total walk back.
And Blue Owl Capital pulling out of a $10 billion data center deal. These are sophisticated money managers. They see the balance sheet, they see the stalled tech, and they're running for the exits.
But why? Why did they give him so much money in the first place if the math was this bad?
Because of the soft promise?
Oh, this quote. I want you to read this quote because it sums up the insanity of the last few years better than anything else. This is Sam Altman describing their revenue strategy.
Quote, "We have no idea how to generate revenue. We made a soft promise that once we build a generally intelligent system, we will ask it to figure out a way to generate a return for you." End quote.
I mean, wow. Just let that sink in.
Yeah.
The business plan is we don't know how to make money, but we are going to build a computer god, and then we will ask the computer god how to make money.
It is the most bizarre business plan in the history of capitalism. It's theology, not economics. They are betting trillions on a miracle. And as we discussed in segment 1, the miracle, the superintelligence, isn't showing up.
So the investors are realizing, wait, the computer god isn't coming to save the balance sheet.
And that realization is causing the financial black hole to open up and swallow the company whole.
So we have the tech failing, the customers leaving, and the money running out. That brings us to the final pillar. The person steering the ship. The trust problem. Sam Altman.
This is uncomfortable to talk about because Altman is such a central figure in tech. He's been lionized as a visionary. But when things go wrong, people start looking at your history. And Altman's history is complicated.
The source material does not pull punches here. It suggests a pattern of behavior, a pattern of hype over reality.
Let's go back to 2005. His first startup, Looped. It was a location-based social network. Altman claimed it had millions of users. It was the next big thing.
And the reality.
Investigating later showed it had maybe 500 active users. But he managed to sell it anyway. He failed upwards.
Then there's Reddit in 2014. He scraped the site for OpenAI data and promised to give 10% of the value back to the community.
Never happened.
And then the big one, the firing saga of 2023.
We all remember the headlines. The board fired him. But we forget the specific wording they used. They said he was not consistently candid.
Which is polite board speak for, he lied to us.
Exactly. And Ilya Sutskever, the chief scientist, the brilliant mind behind the tech, accused him of a pattern of manipulation before he left the company.
It paints a picture of a hype man. A guy who is incredible at raising money and telling a story, but maybe not the guy you want running a company when the reality hits the fan.
There's a growing disconnect between the mission and the actions. Remember, OpenAI started as a nonprofit. The mission was to benefit humanity. No revenue plans.
And now, they are obsessing over valuation, chasing trillions, and sending investigators to knock on the doors of critics.
The transformation is complete. It has gone from a scientific project to a corporate entity desperate to survive. And that desperation is leading to bad decisions. Look at the hardware failure.
Right. The plan to spend $6.4 billion acquiring Jony Ive's firm to build an iPhone of AI.
By all reports, that project is floundering. It's drawing comparisons to the Humane AI pin, which was a disaster.
Right.
It feels like they were throwing spaghetti at the wall. Ads, hardware, cheaper tiers, hoping something, anything, sticks.
So let's bring this all together. We've unpacked the 4 pillars.
The scaling problem. The tech has hit a wall. The market share collapsed. The moat is gone, and competitors are swimming across. The financial black hole. The spending is unsustainable. And the trust problem, the leadership, has lost credibility.
It's a perfect storm. It reminds me of the warning from George Noble that we mentioned at the start. He compared OpenAI to companies that implode over decades. He said all the warning signs are there.
It raises a fascinating question about the nature of bubbles. We saw it with WeWork. We saw it with the dot-com crash. There is this belief that this time is different, that because the technology feels magical, the laws of physics and economics don't apply.
But gravity always wins eventually.
Gravity always wins, and for OpenAI, gravity's $14 billion in losses and the scaling curve that is flattened out.
So here's the final thought I want to leave our listeners with. We talked about that soft promise, the idea that the AI will solve the economics.
It's the ultimate deus ex machina.
Right. But if the technology is stalled, as the scaling laws suggest, and if the business model relies entirely on that technology becoming a superintelligence, what happens when the investors realize the God in the machine isn't coming?
That is the moment the bubble bursts, when the belief evaporates.
Is OpenAI the next Apple, a company that defines a generation? Or is it the next WeWork, a company built on charisma, burning cash, with no foundation beneath it?
The evidence we've seen today suggests we might be looking at the most expensive WeWork in history.
That is a sobering thought. We will be watching closely to see if they can pull a rabbit out of the hat or if the investigators knocking on doors are just the beginning of the end.
Indeed.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
Until next time.